I'm going to start the transcript, which is something that I learned you can do now. So for those who are hard of hearing can see it. And I'm just going to say, as we continue to welcome more participants, I just want to say welcome everybody who's here on actual time and not on Jewish time. We're so happy to be able to host this seminar. I think we've seen over a couple of years, and particularly now in personal attention with everything that we see in the role that social media is playing in our daily lives and all of the work and all of the great things that we're doing on social media. But at the same time, we have seen a rise of anti-Semitism and on hate on social media. And so we wanted to bring the experts who are helping social media companies and who are advising social media companies about what they can do to make systematic changes in social media to be able to help and to be able to curb that hate that we have seen on social media coming from all sides. So I want to welcome our partners from ADL, Robin Burstein, who's the brand new Deputy Regional Director at ADL working out of Philly. Jeremy Bennett, who's a brand new senior project management for the Center of Extremism. And then our speaker today, Daniel Kelly, but I'm going to pass the ball to Robin, who's going to talk a little bit about the work that ADL and particularly our partnership with Philly is doing. And then she's going to introduce our speaker today. And you're muted, Robin. Still muted.
Still muted, Robin.
Okay, how's that? Is that working better?
That's working.
Fabulous. So I want to thank Allentown JCRC and particularly Aaron Gordinsky for helping to coordinate this important conversation. ADL's mission to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to secure justice and fair treatment to all has never been more important than it is at this moment. ADL is a 100-year-old and anti-hate organization, and we have only just begun to fight against anti-Semitism and against all forms of hate. ADL is the first call when acts of anti-Semitism occur. We're the foremost expert in the study of extremism, a worldwide leader in anti-bias education. We defend Israel's right to exist, calling out those who delegitimize and demonize her. And we are the foremost authority and leader on fighting hate online. We live in an era of multiple simultaneous threats from a wide range of extremists and movements who are increasingly skilled at exploiting technology and social media to recruit and radicalize followers. The challenges are great. We are called to fulfill ADL's mission to fight the defamation of the Jewish people and secure justice and fair treatment to all. These goals are complementary. If you want Jews to live without fear in the United States, then you should march for equality and justice for Black people, Latinos, and all Americans. And if you believe America needs to work harder to deliver equality and justice to its people, then you should stand with ADL against anti-Semitism, regardless of where it originates. It is now my pleasure to introduce Daniel Kelly. Daniel is the Associate Director of ADL's Center for Technology and Society, which we internally say is CTS, which works to ensure justice and fair treatment to all in the digital environment. Daniel leads operations and project management for CTS, including CTS's groundbreaking work on AI machine learning and hate speech online with UC Berkeley's D-Lab. And he does research into emerging digital spaces such as social VR. Daniel also leads CTS's work to fight hate, bias, and harassment in the gaming community. Daniel was named one of New York Jewish Week's 36 Under 36 for 2018 for his innovative work with the Center on Technology and Society. He has an MFA from Hunter College and a BA from Sarah Lawrence College. And it's my pleasure to hand it over to Daniel.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here, and thanks for all for spending more time on Zoom in this pandemic time. You agreed to do more time on Zoom, so bless you. I'm going to share my screen now, and I'll talk a little bit about ADL's work in the Center for Technology and Society, and sort of what we mean when we talk about fighting hate online. Can everyone see my screen? Everyone see it? Yes, nods. Great,
Yeah.
thumbs up. You went off mute to thumbs up, which I love. So I'm Daniel Kelly. A little bit of a title change, but that's okay. I'm the Director of Strategy and Operations for the Center for Technology and Society at ADL. And as Robin mentioned, our mission is to secure justice and fair treatment to all in a digital environment. So ADL has really been fighting online hate since the 1980s, right? So we're talking about electronic bulletin boards of hate at that time. And the Center for Technology and Society, where I work, was founded in 2017, one of the big bets by the incoming CEO, Jonathan Greenblatt, to sort of centralize and amplify the work that ADL is doing to fight hate online. But really, what does it mean to secure justice and fair treatment to all in digital environments? So there are two fundamental questions about the nature of hate on digital social platforms that we don't know the answer to. How much hate is there online? And is anything that the tech companies are doing to address this problem meaningfully moving the needle to make things better for users, especially users from vulnerable and marginalized communities? So there are three primary ways that we aim to get our arms around the problem, which I'll review with you today. At CTS, we are measuring hate online. To understand the scope and depth of the problem. We do tech accountability research to evaluate how effective company efforts are to address the problem. And we conduct advocacy, both in private with the tech companies themselves in conversation, and publicly to push tech companies to change through public pressure. So let's dive into some of the projects and some of the ways which we do this. So understanding online hate and harassment. So let's get a little bit into what we do, providing deep looks into the state of online hate. So every year for the past 3 years, we surveyed American adults, and in our 2021 nationally representative survey of internet users, 41% of Americans reported being harassed online during their lifetime. 27 reported having severe harassment, which is physical threats, sexual harassment, stalking, and sustained harassment. So that's 1 in 4 of you, if you think about that. So if it's not you directly, then it's in 1 in 4 of your friends or your coworkers or someone in your community. And as was the case with overall reports of harassment, LGBTQ plus respondents were at 52% experienced far higher rates of severe harassment than all other groups. The next highest amount of severe harassment was reported by Muslim Americans at 36%, comparable to 32% previously. Severe harassment among female identified respondents stayed relatively stable compared to the prior year at 29%. So most disturbingly, our survey this year found that Asian American people are reporting higher levels of severe harassment this survey. And as I said, severe harassment is defined as sexual harassment, stalking, physical threats, swatting, doxing, sustained harassment. And we can't look at this in isolation. Despite the seemingly blitz of self-regulation from technology companies announcing policy changes and product changes, the level of online hate and harassment reported by users barely shifted when we compare to reports from a year ago. And in the case of Asian Americans who were surveyed, their harassment got substantially worse. Similarly here, we see high levels of harassment directed at a cross-section of vulnerable communities over the last 3 years. So notably, LGBTQ plus Americans have been the most harassed on social media every year over the past 3 years, according to our nationally representative survey. And simultaneously, as the incidence of severe harassment did not lessen, respondents reported that platforms actually did less to address physical threats. So 41% of respondents stated that social media platforms did not take any action on threatening content. not specifically significant from 38% last year, but still a sort of staggering amount. Only 14% of those surveyed reported that the company deleted the threatening content, a significant drop from 22% last year, and 17% stated that the platform blocked the user who posted the threatening content, a sharp decrease from last year's result of 28%. So I think this is, you may have heard some news about Facebook today, or really any day this week. Our survey shows that this is, we asked where do users experience the most harassment? And notably, Facebook was the place where the majority of users experience harassment. And I think this raises a really important point. When I have these conversations with folks about, how do we get to the solution to online hate? Common wisdom seems to suggest, or somewhere in the ether, there's a sort of a common refrain that if we just get rid of anonymity, right? If we just have people use their real names, that will get rid of online hate and harassment. That's actually really not true, right? Facebook, and this is a really good example of that. Facebook has what's called a real names policy, which means that ostensibly anyone who appears on Facebook has to use their real name in order to have a profile, right? And so given the news, I'm sure you've all seen with the leaks from Frances Haugen, the Facebook's need to change its name to get away from its toxic brand image, right? I think it speaks to the fact that anonymity is, getting rid of anonymity won't necessarily meaningfully impact the problem of online hate and harassment. And it's actually really important for certain marginalized communities. For instance, if an LGBTQ young person can't be out in their offline world, it's possible that in an online space, they could be out under a pseudonym in a way that allows them to express their true selves in a way they couldn't be offline. So this is something I want to highlight as we talk about Facebook being the platform with the most harassment here. So I'll talk a little bit now about hate in online games and the work we do there. So this is an example of a clip from Fortnite, which is a popular first-person shooter with over 200 million users. Inside of Fortnite, you can actually sort of create your own various structures, and here you see a user who created a swastika inside of Fortnite. No other civil society organization is working on games in this way, and certainly no other organization is looking to combat anti-Semitism inside of online games. So a little bit of background about why online games. So there are 214 million Americans who are gamers, and the majority of them are 18 to 54. So whenever people think of gaming, they usually think of young people, right? They think of teenagers or people who are tweens, but actually the majority of gamers in the US are adults, right? And so this is an important thing that when we're talking about online games, we're not necessarily talking about spaces with dissimilar users from social media, right? We're not necessarily talking about a kiddie space, right? Though there are definitely young people who play video games, of course, but just something that I like to sort of highlight here. And our survey this year, coming out for the third year in a row, shows an increase year over year between 18. Our survey looks at 18 to 45-year-olds and found that 83% of adults who play online multiplayer games experience harassment. 71% experience severe harassment, which is using the same sort of methodology and approach as the previous survey, which includes physical threats, sustained harassment, stalking, swatting, and doxing. And here we see, again, marginalized communities that are disproportionately targeted. I think really notably here, Black or African American and Asian American gamers are seeing double-digit increases year over year in terms of their experiences of harassment in online games. And I think we also look at specifically the game titles. So this is looking at a wide variety of game titles. So I think the one thing to highlight here is Common wisdom may associate harassment in online games with first-person shooters like Call of Duty or Fortnite, but actually, if you look across the swath of games, whether it's a football game like Madden NFL, whether it's sort of a creation game like Minecraft, whether it's a strategy game like League of Legends, harassment exists across all forms of games, and it doesn't take to one particular genre or another. So that's just something to sort of flag for folks. And then this is where we get to, so we do these sort of nationally representative surveys, but surveys have limits. In addition to nationally representative surveys, CTS is looking to build new tools and products that allow third parties like ADL to actually more explicitly measure hate online. We still can't answer, even with all of this, with all of these surveys, how much hate is there on platform X, what's its impact, what communities are being targeted on platforms, and are mitigation strategies working? And so to sort of engage in a more robust measurement, we're building something called the Online Hate Index, which uses deep knowledge of hate speech to get, we're building sort of a product team at ADL. We have engineers, software engineers, machine learning engineers, product managers who are working along with myself and my colleagues on our team to create a series of tools that will allow for more robust, starting with anti-Semitism where ADL lives and building on our historical expertise in identifying anti-Semitism, and building out tools that can sort of embody that and measure these platforms at scale. So that's something to look for from us in the future. The other piece of work that we do is tech accountability research. This gets at the question of how do we know that anything that platforms are doing is actually working? So in order to do that, I'm first going to talk a little bit about the changes platforms are making to address hate on their platforms. So I'm just asking you to take a look at these headlines, right? This headline says the first indicates that Facebook has banned Holocaust denial content. This one claims that YouTube will remove videos claiming voter fraud. And the third says Twitter expands hateful conduct rules. So the first two headlines are a bit misleading, while the third is accurate, but maybe a little less exciting. So when a platform announces changes, more often than not, they're talking about changes to platform policy, the rules that actually govern how they respond to reports from users, rather than any proactive action on their part, right? And when platforms announce these changes, what we see publicly and account for generally is that the platform changes some text on the website that lists their platform rules. That's it. Ostensibly, the changing of these rules have implications for how the platform operates when various harmful content is reported, and how the platform responds, or how the platform is tuning its proactive detection measures to relative to platform rules. However, none of that downstream effects, none of those additional effects are actually and the ways in which it impacts users, none of that is visible to the public, right? We don't know, outside of changing to a text on a website, we really have no idea how and whether these changes are actually doing anything. So that's why we started doing this series of report cards in the past year, which look across a variety of ways in which platforms address anti-Semitism and hate on the platform. So as part of these report cards, what we do is we look beyond purely just the high-level policy and try to help the public understand a broad picture of how tech companies address hate on their platforms. So this sort of report card, which was a few months ago now, looked at how platforms are addressing anti-Semitism across policy, as well as looking at enforcement and trusted flagger programs, product and data accessibility. We found that most platforms had a middling grade due to the fact that they don't enforce their policy. So as part of this, we find anti-Semitic content, we report it via the normal channels that a user would have, and we record the results, right? Did they take action on the content? Did they tell you they took action on the content? When did they tell you? Did they tell you why they took action, right? These are all the things that one might expect from a platform, especially a platform that has, thousands of employees and makes millions of dollars in revenue every year, you'd imagine that they might be able to have these sort of processes in place. And in many cases, they definitely did not. We also, ADL has these trusted flagger accounts with various tech platforms. And so we are able to, in addition to testing, general user flagging of anti-Semitic content, we're testing, does the trusted flagger program that we're a part of, right, ostensibly an official channel between ADL and the platform, do they actually respond to content that's flagged in that way, even if they don't respond to a general user reporting content? And again, when we tabulated the results, the platforms failed the test. Twitter and YouTube, two very large public companies, did the best out of all the platforms, but overall, platforms' actions were pretty inconsistent. And Roblox, which is a platform for young people, one of the leading gaming platforms that does pride itself on making it a safe space for children, didn't remove clear anti-Semitism when we brought it to their attention at all. So a similar sort of project that we did here is Holocaust denial scorecard, which we did in January of last year, and which we may repeat in January of the coming year in commemoration of Holocaust Remembrance Day. This was important this past year because Facebook had just announced, after 10 years of advocacy, that they were going to take action on Holocaust denial content as hate speech, which was just an absurd policy that we had been protesting and advocating against for all that time. But we found that even though Facebook made this very highly publicized policy change, they didn't actually take action on Holocaust denial content that we reported to them. And we looked across a few platforms. Twitch, the platform which is used for video game streaming, actually did take more action on Holocaust denial content than others. But this is sort of an example of us, finding ways, given that platforms aren't particularly forthcoming with information about whether they're effective in what they're doing. These are ways that we try to hold them accountable in public. And so the next slide will be some horrible anti-Semitism. That are some of the examples of what we see, just so you're aware, right? So these are things that it's not, there is content where there is a line, right, where things are a tough call, right? Maybe is it not, right? That's not where we were reporting. We were not reporting edge cases. We were reporting things that were blatant and obvious and classic anti-Semitic tropes, anti-Semitic images, things that any reasonable person would see as classic examples of anti-Semitism, and still platforms aren't really doing a good job addressing this content. So the next sort of piece that I'll talk about is some of our research fellows. So we work with leading scholars and researchers, journalists, and give them sort of year-long fellowships where we work with them on a sort of a project where they are digging in deep to a problem. So you may have heard in the news or otherwise about YouTube bringing people down rabbit holes of extreme content, right, and radicalizing people through the ways in which content is recommended. So, but like many things, this hadn't yet been empirically proven. And so, what Dr. Brendan Nyhan did was he created a tool that people could download and got a statistical sample, a nationally representative sample of users to download the browser extension and basically track their YouTube viewing habits over a period of time, and see if people who viewed extreme content, extremist content, white supremacist content, or sort of fringe content that has been proven to lead to more extreme and radical views, if that actually did bring people down a rabbit hole. And to some extent, we found that it did. And I think notably what this study found was that people who were predisposed to, I think specifically to to have high levels of racial resentment, were more drawn to extreme content and went further down those rabbit holes that further confirmed their sort of already heinous views on race and racism. So these are the kinds of things where in 2019, YouTube said, "Hey, we fixed it, right? We changed the way our algorithm functions, and people are no longer going to be going down rabbit holes." So it's these kinds of experiments that allow us to say, "Hey, wait a minute, that's not what we're seeing, right? That's not what our results show." And so, what is the difference between what our experiments show and what you're seeing? And actually, our study was used here in a hearing where Representative Ashu from California was questioning the CEO of Google. And I think we were very proud to be able to say that yes, in fact, the ADL does know.
Daniel, I think he's having a little technical difficulty, so we're gonna wait for a second until he realizes that he has been disconnected, and then he will connect again. Let me share the link with him again. Okay, he just disconnected and he's going to connect again in 1 second. In the meantime, oh, there he is.
Sometimes technology doesn't work exactly the way you want it to.
I think YouTube knows what you're doing right now, and they disconnected you.
Yeah, I know. YouTube is where did you all lose me?
We lost you after congressional the
Great.
there. Yes.
Okay. Can you see my screen there?
Yes.
Great. Awesome. So yeah, we led so in the summer of last year, we led a coalition of civil rights groups on a campaign that pushed back against Facebook and the degree to which they are spreading hate, disinformation, these kinds of things. And our expectations were blown away. We had 1,200 companies that came out and pledged to pause advertising on Facebook for the month of July last year, and the results were tremendous. I think it was both extremely impactful in the sense that it pushed Facebook to do things that we'd been advocating for many years, including the what I previously mentioned about Holocaust denial. Some policy changes we were calling around militia actors, various conspiracy theories, releasing a prevalence metric for hate, a bunch of things that we'd been calling for. And I think it was both really gratifying and impactful, but also, I think it also affirmed for me and for many others the fact the most cynical takes on Facebook, which is that they are driven by PR and they are driven by public pressure in a way that you'd like to believe that the private conversations we've had specifically with them for many years could lead to these kinds of outcomes, but instead it took the sort of combined might of a coalition of storied civil rights organizations pushing companies to pause their advertisements, and pull money from Facebook essentially for a month to get Facebook to actually make these kinds of changes. So it was both, I think we see it as a victory, but it is a little bittersweet in the sense that it sort of confirms and has been further confirmed the degree to which Facebook as a company is really, whatever your cynical take of what motivates Facebook, it's worse than that, right? So one of the other things that we do, and this connects to the advocacy piece, is do advocacy for targets of cyber harassment. And so this is a question to folks here on the call. Is anyone familiar with what swatting is? I know I mentioned it once before. Does anyone know what swatting is?
No.
No, some people are nodding. Some people are saying yes. But so swatting is when someone makes a false report to the police and gives someone's personal information so that a SWAT team is deployed to your house to essentially terrorize you. And this is often coupled with something called doxing. Do folks, does anyone know what doxing is? Toby, you nodded yes. Do you want to say what doxing is? I think you nodded yes. I could be wrong.
I did. I started yet. It is my understanding that it's when you follow someone online in order to harass them.
Mhm. So that's not exactly. It can doxing can result in that, but doxing is actually taking someone's personal identifiable information and posting it online with malicious intent. So if you do that, you really could end up following someone around online to harass them. But doxing is something similar, and doxing is often paired with swatting, right? You post somebody's personally identifiable information online, their phone number, their address, and then you call in a fake police report and send a SWAT team to their house. So these are some of the most egregious forms of online harassment. And so we, yeah, in the last year, we released a report looking at the ways that hate impacts people in a more personal way. And often contributing factors were race, gender, sexual identity, or religion. So sometimes, I've been saying a lot of statistics. I've been saying a lot of sort of facts, but sometimes a little short video makes things easier. So hopefully you all can see this, but here is a little short video about some of these and the impacts it has on people in communities.
Dan, I don't think we can hear the sound.
Oh no. Let's see here. Maybe I need to share.
Yeah, share the screen and then Kit would like the sound thing.
Yeah. There we go.
You can threaten to murder me.
Threaten to rape my daughter,
Yes, sound.
who's 5.
The police can't help me.
Neither can the courts.
So yeah,
Go ahead.
publish my home address online.
Make a false police report and have a SWAT team deployed to my home.
Because you don't like people like me.
Like me.
Like me. Like me. You cost me my reputation,
My safety.
My job.
my business.
But you have nothing to worry about.
Because laws that should protect me are outdated.
Or don't exist at all.
So no consequences for you.
And no protections for me.
Until we have the laws to fight back.
It doesn't have to be like this.
So this is, let's see here. So this is where we get to our Backspace Hate campaign, which was, you saw as the sort of tag there, where we're actually trying to modernize and update laws around things like swatting and doxing, as well as cyber harassment and these kinds of phenomena. Not just looking at, not looking at holding the platforms accountable necessarily in this sense, but looking at how do we hold perpetrators of online hate and harassment accountable for these things. So we had an anti-doxing bill signed into law in Nevada, an anti-swatting bill in Texas, cyber harassment bills in Connecticut, and improved Oregon's anti-doxing bill. So that's another area where we're doing public legislative advocacy in order to fight and combat hate online. Moving forward, we're going to be looking at other forms of legislative advocacy. So in California, there's a law we're pushing called AB 587, which is looking at compulsory transparency from tech companies, making sure that they report on their policies and the ways in which they enforce against those policies comprehensively and systematically across multiple platforms. So these are some of the ways in which we are doing advocacy. And I'll finish here with a little bit about how you all can help in a little bit of a workshop where I will show you, some people are very familiar with how to report hate on various social media platforms, and other people are less familiar. So what I'll do is I'll go through a couple different platforms and show you some content and show you how to report it. And then I can send along, at the end of this, I can send along a resource that we have that actually goes through a much broader cross-section of platforms and shows a little bit better how to report there. So I'll stop sharing this screen here, and I will, sorry, I will pull up different screen. Here, can you see this screen here? So this is the resource here, and I'll put this in the chat so you can all take a look at that. And then I will go to the first piece of content. So this is the big one. This one is Facebook, and this one, I've been using the same piece of content for presentations, I would say all year. And every presentation I do, I report this piece of content. And sometimes it makes it, I have to, after a presentation, I have to go in and look for something else because the platform actually does take action. But for this one, they just haven't. So what we do is we click on, usually there's like 3 dots on a piece of content right here, and then we can go to find, support, or report photo. And there's a variety of different categories which you can report a piece of content. For this one, I'll say hate speech. I think what's interesting here for Facebook is you can actually choose, what kind of hate you're being targeted with or you're seeing on the platform. And that is something that Facebook has stored in their data banks. The sort of ways in which people across their platform, billions of users across the world, are targeted based on their identity and with the information tagged by identity. And we've talked to them about it. We've said, this is exactly the information we want. This is exactly what we want to know. How much, to what degree are different communities being targeted on your platform? And they've said to us, oh yeah, but we don't use it. We don't use this for anything, right? We just keep this in a box somewhere because they didn't feel like this is a strong enough signal. People's, subjective experience of hate, which is another reason why, I think they're one of the worst actors that are around. So I will say that it's for a religious affiliation, and they're going to tell you, they're going to sort of explain their policy a little bit, and then I'm going to submit. I want to receive notification about the report. I'll click submit, and then they'll give you a little timeline of their review. We'll see if by the end of this program, if any of these folks, what else would you do? You can block, you can hide, and these kinds of things. So that's how you report a piece of content on Facebook. The next one I will do is Twitter. So Twitter here, again, so these are various anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. I will click here. The 3 dots is generally what you're looking for on a platform. Click report tweet. And then here you do have to dig a little bit different to get into. So you would say abusive or harmful if it's hate. It directs hate against a protected category, a group of people in this instance. And Twitter actually lets you, as opposed to Facebook, which doesn't really let you tag additional content from the same user. Twitter does allow you to do that up to 5. This is another thing which is where we're advocating for. If you're being inundated with hundreds of tweets of abuse, right? Let's say you're a public figure, a politician, a celebrity, somebody that is being abused publicly in a really heinous manner. 5 tweets is nothing, right? Being able to say do 5 at a time is really very little, right? And so we advocate for more user controls so that people who are inundated with mass harassment have the ability to report more at a time. So I'm going to add one here and report, and they ostensibly will tell me what's going on there. So the last one I will show you is Roblox, which is a platform for young people. It's a game platform that is searchable, and that is that consists of a bunch of different experiences. So interesting. Okay, this is different from earlier. Oh, they changed it. Okay, so I do have an image that I can show you of what was. So sometimes they actually do take action on these things. So yesterday, you may have seen in the news, there was a bunch of reports of the judge in the case of Kyle Rittenhouse, the person who was the shooter in Kenosha last year, who murdered several people. Some various horrible news. So I wanted to see if there was ostensibly because often there are people use Roblox to sort of, let's see, yeah, here it is. Use Roblox to venerate shooters, do various things. So this is somebody had created an avatar of Kyle Rittenhouse, the murderer in Roblox. And so if you were searching for Kyle, right, if you were a big South Park fan and were looking for Kyle, and you ended up, you could ostensibly find a Kyle Rittenhouse avatar, which you can play with in Roblox. Roblox being a platform for children, I think they have an especially high bar for the kinds of content that they should be responsible for addressing. And so that's why I wanted to sort of bring that up. So that is ostensibly the different ways in which both we as an organization, advocate and try to fight hate online. We measure hate online. We do tech accountability research to hold platforms accountable, and we do advocacy to push both privately and publicly for change online. And I do think that I showed you reporting, which may seem trivial, but it actually is a super important part of what individuals can do to notify, to use your voice, essentially, to be an advocate and to speak up against hate online, and to notify the platforms that what you're seeing is hate, and you believe it is hate, and you are experiencing it as hate on their platform. So I want to thank you all for coming tonight and for attending. And this is my information, and I'm happy to take any questions in the last 15 minutes we have here.
So Dan, before we open, I'm going to ask a couple of the questions. I see Sandra also has a question.
Sure.
Just something some people who couldn't be here, but we're recording the session for everybody to share.
Sure.
How responsive has been the meetings that you had from Facebook? We participated in the No Hate campaign in our community. We shared it with everybody. We didn't advertise on Facebook, although we don't really advertise on Facebook as a community. Right. And it seems like it was very responsive the month after. And then all of a sudden, we experience a rise of anti-Semitism. And sometimes that's hiding under anti-Israel hate that we saw so massively rise during the last conflict between Israel and Hamas. And we feel in the Jewish community that the social media networks have, they just, they did it when they had to be on the news, but as soon as the news changed, everything blanked. So has there been any significant conversation between ADL and other companies with the social media to change that? And I did notice that in the reporting, you know, I don't know where to pick anti-Semitism in any of them, but they know it's an issue. They know all the Holocaust jokes, all the Holocaust content, that all the how come they don't allow us to report anti-Semitism directly on those social media? And is this a decision made by the company, or they just don't know where to put it? Because anti-Semitism is different from the other categories where you can be reporting.
So I guess there's two questions really here, right? I would say, that your take that platforms respond primarily to public pressure, right, is correct, right? That in general, the platforms respond most strongly to being pressured in public, like they were during Stop Hate for Profit, right? I think there is a value, and we do see. I will say that, for instance, during Stop Hate for Profit, we were targeting Facebook, but because of that public pressure, we were also having conversations because of the relationships we had with other platforms that didn't want to see the same sort of beacon turned on them. And we did see some really notable changes from other platforms during that same time, right? And I think we do, the reporting that we do, the report cards that we did, right? I think we saw, actually, I can pull up Reddit. Actually, the platform Reddit actually did a really deep dive on Holocaust denial content across the whole of their platform, which I can pull up or send along afterwards. Directly resulting from the sort of scorecard work that we did in public, but also building on our sort of private relationship with them, for them to actually do a real deep dive into what it looks like, what they're doing about it, and how much there is on their platform. So I thought that was really notable. And in terms of anti-Semitism, I think there's a variety of different groups that you can, it depends on the platform, right? But some platforms do enumerate different protected groups that you can sort of list under, that you can report under. I would say, it's our recommendation that we do have, specific protected groups covered. And in in the anti-Semitism report card that we did, we did make sure to classify, to say that platforms should have a policy both focusing on religion, but also on sort of race and ethnicity, because people either may be targeted or may identify as Jewish under any of those categories, and so all of those categories should be protected on the platforms.
Sandra, you had a question?
Questions. First of all, you listed a website for Facebook to report. It was only up there for about a second, and I was wondering if I could get that. But
Yeah.
The problem is, if you put it on chat, I have to spend the time writing it all down. There's all these numbers. So what is a fast way? Is this listed on an ADL website, or how?
So it's not like it's so this is not a website to report on Facebook, right? This is the actual image of this image, right? And so any piece of content. So if I go, I don't know what my friends are posting, but you'll have to forgive me, right? If I go to, if I go to
Daniel, I'm not following you. I'm not following.
Yeah, so I'm going to my regular Daniel's Facebook page, right?
Yeah.
So any piece of content on Facebook has these three dots, right?
What
Anything
three dots are you talking about? On
so
the top
these
corner?
These dots, yes, these dots in the top corner.
You're saying these dots, but I don't know where you're talking about. All I see is a thank you, Daniel Kelly on the screen. So
well, that's because I'm sharing the wrong screen. So that would be why.
Oh, thank you, Daniel.
that would be why this is so. So this is my personal Facebook page, right?
Okay,
so you
I see the three dots. Thank you.
These are the three dots. And it's me making fun of Facebook on Facebook. And then so I guess I can't report my own content. So let me go to something stupid my friends have posted. And I'm not actually going to report them, but let's American Theater Magazine. Sorry. So it's you have these three dots, right?
Yeah.
And then at the bottom you have find, support, or report post.
Okay. Thank
right?
you.
And that's when you get the actual drop down
Thank you.
of things. Yeah, absolutely.
And my other question was, you had some statistics at the beginning, and I was unclear when you said, let's say 27% of the people complained. I don't have a sense of whether it's 27% of 100 people or 27% of a million people. How many people were part of
Sure.
your group?
Sure. So I think we did, so for each survey that we do a nationally representative sample, right? So meaning that we are working with a survey company that is surveying, usually we do something between 1,000 and 2,000 people for each survey, and that we are breaking it down by sort of statistical breakdowns using the census and other means around different kinds of populations, so that we are able to say, we didn't survey the full 300 million Americans, right? But we did do survey a statistical amount, a large enough amount of people that statistically we can speak to the experience of Americans generally.
Thank you.
Sure. Other questions?
I see one here on the private chat that it says, do you foresee any other changes coming after the release of the Facebook papers on the social media, or what are they working on right now that can be seen as significant change that it's going to curb the rise of hate and anti-Semitism on the social media?
Sure. So I think what we're seeing in reaction to the Haugen, Francis Haugen, the Facebook whistleblower and the Facebook papers, the reaction that we're seeing from Facebook is different than ones that I've seen before, in which they're getting more defiant and less and are trying to discredit the whistleblower, are trying to discredit the papers, are trying to, they're not, despite the fact that they're getting an avalanche of press around some of this, it doesn't seem as though, they're sort of, today's announcement was that Facebook is changing their name to Meta, right? As you may have seen, right? And so that they're trying to change, Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg are being much less public in their defense of the company, right? So I think what we're going to see is not necessarily a change in company action based on this. I could see it, there being a clamping down of leaks, right? A sort of recalcitrance around engaging with the media. But I do think this is going to be a meaningful change for how lawmakers think about Facebook specifically. And I do think we're going to see an advancement of legislation to hold Facebook and other platforms accountable in ways we haven't seen before. So that's, we'll see if I'm right. But that's my prediction.
I saw the face of Toby of shock when you gave that response. And our last question is regarding exactly what you just said. What can we do as an organized Jewish community in the Lehigh Valley to help support your efforts, whether it's with legislation or whether it's with individual reporting, to make sure that we don't see a repeat of what happened during the last escalation where we saw a 400% increase of anti-Semitism on all the social media networks and very low response from them?
Sure. So yeah, I would say individual reporting is extremely important, as I said, to make sure you're using your voice to push against hate on platforms, to notify them about the hate that you're seeing, right? And I think even if those processes are imperfect, I think it is important to continue to do that. And I think, there may be opportunities for the kinds of legislation that we're doing in other states in your location in the future. And I think I'll definitely be in touch with you, with our Philadelphia office around opportunities for legislative action, and my colleagues will be as well.
Well, I just want to say thank you to Daniel for coming back from your paternity leave with a brand new baby who's probably napping right now, and taking a full hour to speak to us on how important these topics are as we are more digitally connected. We've also seen how things have changed and how we need to protect each other. You know, we had a community service that was Zoom bombed at the start of the pandemic. But I think we were all bombed by the rise of hate that we saw on the social media networks and by how unpowered we felt about the fact that we couldn't really do much because they weren't listening to us. And I think holding these types of seminars and learning from you and the work that ADL as our partner, as our national partner is doing at the congressional level, but also in terms of research, is really going to help push forward the significant changes that we want to see. So we feel safe when we're navigating social media and we are using it for the proper things that we are, which is to brag about our new babies and show our support of other things and not to have to hide ourselves or have to report all of those tweets and all of those Instagram stories that portray the Jewish community in ways that it shouldn't be portrayed. So I just want to thank you again for joining us and everybody for being here, and look
Thank you so
forward
much.
to hosting more of this programs, which I think are great ways for us to learn about it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.